And this is Y'all Talk with a Southern Accent, and we're going to have an SEC report courtesy of Tide 100.9's Ryan Fowler. That is in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Welcome back to the show that covers everything Southern. I'm John Rawl, and I told Ryan I wasn't going to have him on the show that's about the South until the Alabama Crimson Tide got back to number one in the poll. And guess what? They just did that, and we can make room for Ryan to come on and give us his Crimson Tide emphasis on all things college football and more. Welcome from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, the host of the game on Tide 100.9. That's the official sports station there in Tuscaloosa. Ryan Fowler, he is back on the Y'all Show. Hello there, Ryan.
Man, I'm doing good, John. It's great to see you, and I hope all is well in your world.
All's well for me. I know things are good for you.
Hey, Alabama's number one, and, I think we have to pause for a couple seconds and look at it. 13 consecutive years, Alabama's been at that number one spot. It's pretty amazing when you really spend time thinking about it. You look at LSU, a great example, number one. They're able to maintain it for about, 6-7 months, and that's it. When you look at LSU, from the pinnacle, to the outhouse in just a short time. But you look at Alabama for 13 consecutive years. It's something that we're caught up in the moment, but I think one day we'll be able to reflect and look at it and go, wow, he did what? 13 consecutive years for Nick Saban.
All well in Tuscaloosa, all not well in Columbia, South Carolina. On Sunday, the Gamecocks released Will Muschamp as head coach of South Carolina. Ryan Fowler, was this a shock to you?
No, I think it had been coming. I think you could kind of see it, and you thought that some of these coaches may get a mulligan because of COVID-19. But I think when you look at Muschamp, he had just not done enough. He had not done enough when you look at it. And I like him as a coach, but I just don't think that, for some reason, his overall process of managing everything just doesn't seem to be there. I think he's a great defensive mind, but when he tries to tie it all together, it just doesn't work for Muschamp.
Ryan, have you seen his defenses lately?
I have, yeah, and they're not very good, which I don't know if anybody's good at defense, right? I mean, Nick Saban's defense struggles here in Tuscaloosa. This is not one of the great defenses here.
All right, well, good point there. But the Gamecocks here mid-season, in a COVID season at that, telling Will Muschamp, we'll pay you $15 million. Just go on, get out of here. So where does South Carolina go next?
You got to go out and find a coach that's willing to go to South Carolina because you look at the SEC East. I don't think Florida's going to, that they may be the king over there in the SEC East. Georgia's not going to give it up. You look at some other schools and you kind of think, okay, Tennessee, and I almost wonder if Jeremy Pruitt might be in a little bit of trouble, that he could develop into some hot seat material there. When you look at these coaches, and this is the issue. I think we're going to see a reset in the market when you take a look at coaches' salaries, program, what they're spending. But the deal is you got to be able to do all that and attract a top-notch coach. That's the trick. That's trying to juggle that, is trying to convince your boosters to give me plenty of money, continue to donate that money. But by the way, we're going to have to cut some of that expenses. I mean, you look at a player program like Alabama, I think they're going to be down $70 million. I don't care if you are Alabama. You have to tighten the belt loop a little bit. You got to make sure the lights are cut out, when you walk out of the building, just to save electricity. And that's the athletic director's juggle right now, is trying to get a coach, but also trying to keep those boosters happy and feel like that they're going the right direction.
We're talking SEC sports right now. Ryan Fowler of Tide 100.9 is kind enough to take some time right here. I guess he had a little bit extra time, as Alabama, along with half of the SEC, didn't have to play this past weekend because of the coronavirus. And if you have a question or comment about SEC sports, feel free to fire away right now to Ryan, and we'll try to get that question asked to Ryan Fowler of Tide 100.9 on this, the show that covers everything Southern. We're going to get to the standings. We're going to cover what's happening here this coming weekend in SEC football and more. But Ryan, of course, the big storyline here this fall is something that nobody can control, the coronavirus. And you're a smart guy. How would you rate how the SEC's handled the virus thus far?
Well, I think if Greg Sankey really took charge. The Big Ten tried to trip him up and trip up the rest of college football.
Yeah,
I mean,
they
that
did.
was what they were trying to do. And when you back up and you look at the Big Ten, they wanted everybody to follow them. And then when the SEC didn't follow them and they kind of did their own thing, I think you got to look back at Greg Sankey and say, you know what? I think he's done a great job of managing. I'd probably give him a B plus, A minus. The protocol of the quarantine testing and the different things when you put them in a quarantine, the contact tracing may need to be adjusted a little bit. The truth of the matter is I was doing some work earlier and interviewed a physician, and he pointed it out that the kids that these age have a 99.997 recovery percentage. In other words, their survival rate is that in this age bracket, not just athletes, but in this age bracket, 99.997. We saw another game get canceled a couple of minutes ago, with Ole Miss, Texas A&M. This is probably going to happen more frequently. That this is, I think that's why you saw the SEC back up and do December the 19th, as another game option for some of these games that are canceled. So I think Greg Sankey's overall A minus, B plus.
All right. Ron, let's get into where we are as a conference in terms of standings and such. The Florida Gators currently in the cat house right now, or penthouse, maybe that's the right word, in the penthouse of the SEC East after they took care of Georgia and the cocktail party, and they look to be marching their way toward Atlanta. Georgia's behind them with a 4-2 conference mark here at this point. Then you shift over to the West. Alabama, certainly the number one team in the country, looking so good right now for Nick Saban and company. But the Texas A&M Aggies, although they lost to Alabama earlier in the year, they're hoping for one little hiccup from Alabama. And if that happens, they might have a chance to find themselves in Atlanta. Auburn's still not out of the equation. Your thoughts on where we are from a standing standpoint?
I think Alabama's easy in the SEC West, and I think it's Florida in the SEC East. I think it'd take a lot of mathematical, issues to try to find a way for Alabama to trip Kentucky this week. Then they've got the mid-major Auburn coming to town coming up next week, and at the Iron Bowl, and trying to find a way to celebrate Thanksgiving and work in a butt whipping for the Auburn Tigers here in Tuscaloosa. So you kind of look at it, and then you look at the SEC Eastern side. Right now, I just don't see that that there's a player for number one. Now, Texas A&M is up in the rankings, and I'm going to be very curious to see what college football playoffs put them, in this ranking. When you look at Notre Dame trying to find a way, Texas A&M, they're in it because if you got Alabama at number one and their only loss is in Alabama in Tuscaloosa, then Texas A&M's got a good argument. I don't think anybody in the SEC East has an argument. I think Georgia, unless just something crazy happens in college football, they're out. But when you back up and you take a look at this Alabama team, maybe the debate would be, who's going to step up in that second place role? Who's going to step up in that second role and really determine it? And not just for 2020, but the future. Who's going to be that second place team in the SEC West, the toughest division in all of college football?
And Ryan, of course, with the cancellation here for this week, we've got one that we know about already, had a bunch last week. Your thoughts on maybe going back to the old days, the 60s and 70s days of the SEC, where you won based on a percentage of where you have, because there's some teams that may not be able to complete their schedule here this year.
No, and that's, when you look at it from a standpoint, I mean, you just kind of cross your fingers and, you're hoping that you're able to manage it, because it doesn't look like college football playoffs, they're going to adjust and move back. This would be the perfect scenario, is everything could get pushed back a couple of weeks, but I guess contractually they're not they have an obligation with the city, the Rose Bowl out in Pasadena, the Sugar Bowl down in New Orleans. I don't see that flexibility is where you would get flexibility, because the SEC is not able to push back and then try to find a way to, to try to make up this date later, wherever. But until playoffs get pushed back, I don't really know if there is a flexibility. If there's a cancellation, they've already added one day, December the 19th. as a possible play. And after that, it's done. I mean, they don't have any other room unless college football playoffs and the bowl season, allows them to push back a little bit.
All right, well, let's move on to what's happening in the SEC coming up this weekend. It is technically week number 12 of college football, and we have one postponement. The Mississippi at Texas A&M game there in Aggieland has been postponed. Unfortunately, that may not be the only one that gets pushed back here. As we have this week scheduled as of the time that we're talking here, the Florida Gators look like they're going to have an easy contest. They head to Nashville to take on Vanderbilt. LSU and Arkansas to get together at Razorback Stadium in Fayetteville. Kentucky and number 1 Alabama. The Bear Bryant Bowl happens again here this weekend. Tennessee and Auburn. Mississippi State will be at Georgia. And the Missouri Tigers take on the Mike Bobo interim-coached South Carolina Gamecocks. Ryan Fowler, what say you here for Week 12 of college football?
Well, I kind of look at it from Alabama perspective, and I know it's these crimson-colored glasses that are thick on my head. But Alabama hasn't played in a couple of weeks. I want to find out if this Alabama team picks up where they left off with a double bye week, with LSU's cancellation. So to me, it's got to be Alabama to see if they can hold on to that number 1 spot. Can they continue to convince? Because, see, this is the final weekend that you get a chance to impress the committee. Will the committee jump in and put Ohio State there? Will they put Notre Dame there? I mean, Notre Dame's got got a pretty good resume when you look at it. So it's I know we've been looking at these number 1 rankings, but really the AP and the coaches poll, they're more of a novelty poll. I mean, it's just like you and I come up with a poll and we say, hey, this is our top 10. That's about where the AP and the coaches poll is. I know it's it's pretty up on the TV screen when you put a little number there, but at the end of the day, they really don't mean anything. It's the college football playoffs, and that will be not this Tuesday, but the following Tuesday. So this will be the final thing when you look at Alabama trying to find a way to impress the committee to put them at that number 1 spot.
He is the host of The Game on Tide 100.9. We're going to learn a little bit more how you can tune in, Ryan Fowler, each weekday and catch up with what's going on with the Crimson Tide and the rest of the SEC. He does put that crimson-colored glasses on when he has his show. So if you like the Tide, no doubt you'll like The Game on Tide 100.9. So I guess since you are Mr. Crimson Tide, is the Crimson Tide going to be able to work itself not only into the playoff here, assuming we have one, but is this thing going to win another national championship, Ryan Fowler?
I think they've got a great chance, but it's this year that's hard to predict, John. John, think about this. Alabama-Clemson plays tomorrow. You do your COVID testing the night before, and you have a positive test. How about a Trevor Lawrence goes out? How about a Mac Jones goes out for Alabama? So it's just so hard to project with the unknown of college football. You're backing up and you're going, okay, I believe that this is what's going to happen. If everybody stays on schedule as we're looking at, I think Alabama's the best team in the country. But who knows right now when you back up and that could be said for anybody. You go to Notre Dame and you go Ian Book, he's going to miss a game. What game is it? You begin to paint these scenarios. It's almost, and Nick Saban said this last week on his coach's show, it's almost like your biggest opponent is managing COVID-19 within your locker room and to make sure that you're protecting yourself, inside your bubble, because that's the biggest challenge. It's Alabama's got a great football team. Clemson's got a great football team. Ohio State's got a great football team. But without one of their stars, either on offense or defense, those teams could both take a step back. So it's almost managing COVID-19 and making sure that you prevent those positive tests from showing up. And
let's say your quarterback there, Mac, goes down in Tuscaloosa. Are you comfortable with your backup plan?
He's a true freshman, Bryce Young. Extremely talented kid. He's got a dynamic arm, but I don't think he's got the playing experience right now to put this team on his back and say, hey, let's go win a football game. Could you beat Kentucky? Yeah, I think you could beat Kentucky. Could you beat Arkansas? Yeah, I think you could beat Arkansas. You could beat the second tier levels, but I don't think you're going to find a way to beat these upper tier teams, right now with Bryce Young.
And that, again, part of this discussion and fun that you can tune in each day on Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa with Ryan Fowler as your host. And Ryan, if you don't mind, tell us how we can find your show and what all we can find on Tide 100.9.
Well, listen, we do it 2 until 6, and I kind of like what you guys are doing with y'all. I mean, we mix in football, we mix in food, we mix in a little bit of politics from time to time. You never know what we're going to talk about. We're a caller-friendly show, and we start 2 until 6 Central Time. Not really going to guarantee what we're going to talk about, but I will say this: we talk a lot of fun in Tuscaloosa. We have fun. I mean, that's the goal of radio. This is supposed to be fun, and we certainly try to do it each afternoon. And
Ryan's fun on Twitter. If you have a chance, he's at Ryan C. Fowler. Also, what's your Twitter account for the game?
Yeah, it's at Ryan C. Fowler on my personal side, and at The Game on 109. So It's at The Game on 109. You can find me on that platform on both Instagram, Facebook, all the different things. And, we haven't really put a lot out because Alabama's been out for 2 weeks, so we've kind of enjoyed being lazy. But we'll get back in it now with Alabama and Kentucky.
Well, we always go to Ryan Fowler to kind of get the pulse on what's going on in T-Town. And so you're not too worried. I know you're worried about the virus, but other than that, Alabama fans ought to be okay the rest of the next couple months.
I think Alabama's going to be fine. You got Kentucky coming in, and then you got the mid-major Cal College coming in the week after.
Some people call that API, but yeah, that's who Alabama's got. And then they close out this year with Arkansas.
On the road, which Sam Pittman's probably the biggest surprise so far in the SEC. I think he's done a really good job.
All right. Ryan Fowler, Tide 100.9. Ryan, I can't thank you enough for coming on the Y'all Show and talking a little Crimson Tide and SEC football with me.
Well, I tell you what, I definitely have a face for radio. I don't know if you could tell, but this is a face for radio. And going on the television side of things is a little bit different. So I guess I'm going to have to try to find a way to brush up my radio-looking face and, get where you are with a video side of things.
Hey, you can do it. I promise you. You might need to call that second-tier Cal College. I'm sure they've got some engineers that might be able to help you out if you need to go that route.
You're looking good, John. Thank you, man, so much.
You're looking even better. I like the beard, and Alabama's looking good, too. Ryan Fowler, Tide 100.9. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
And more of the Y'all Show talking about the South is coming right up.